My name is Catherine Burns. I'm 69 years old, a retired librarian, and I've lived in Springfield, Missouri my entire life. I've been a widow for almost 12 years. Life hasn't been fancy, but it's been peaceful until that phone call that turned everything upside down. It happened on a Tuesday morning. I was folding laundry when the phone rang. I almost didn't answer because I didn't recognize the number, but something told me to pick up. Mrs. Burns, this is Carla from First Heritage Bank in Kansas City. I'm calling about your mortgage account. I paused, confused. I'm sorry, what mortgage? There was a moment of silence. Then she said, the mortgage you took out in February for $623,000. You're 3 months behind on payments. We've sent several notices. My heart started racing. Ma'am, I haven't bought a house. I've been in this same ranch house for 35 years. I don't owe a dime on it. Well, our records show you as the primary borrower on a property located at 901 Willow Glen Circle, Kansas City. Payments stopped in May. I dropped the laundry basket. My hands were trembling. There's some mistake. I don't even live in Kansas City. She went quiet, then said, Mrs. Burns, this is a serious matter. The property is in pre-foreclosure. If you didn't authorize this loan, I suggest you come in as soon as possible to review the documents. We'll need to verify the identity used to secure the loan. I could hardly breathe. My knees felt weak. I scribbled down the address and ended the call. I sat on the edge of the bed, trying to calm myself. I looked at the paper in my hand. 901 Willow Glen Circle. I knew that address. That was Anthony's new house. My son, he'd just shown me pictures of it over Easter. Said it was a smart move and a blessing. Said he and Cynthia finally found their dream home with a little help. I thought he meant a bank loan. I never dreamed he meant my name. I went to my filing cabinet to check my credit report online. It had always been in good standing, around 780 last I checked. But what I saw now made me feel sick. There it was, First Heritage Bank, a $623,000 mortgage under my name, opened in February. And next to it, in bold letters, past due. I sat in that chair for a long time. My mind was racing. Was this identity theft? A scam? But who would know all my information? My social security number, my income, my address? And then it hit me. A few months ago, Anthony had come over, all casual, and asked me to sign some papers. Said it was for a trust. He'd mumbled something about it, helping him qualify for something. I didn't ask too many questions. He's my only child. I trusted him. I signed without even reading closely, just one page. Or so I thought. That memory clung to me like a weight. What if that moment had opened the door to this whole mess? I needed answers. I called the bank back and made an appointment to come in the next morning. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every conversation I'd had with Anthony over the past year. The way he brushed off money talk. The way Cynthia kept showing off their new house on Facebook and Instagram. Stainless steel kitchen, walk-in closets, some big chandelier over their dining table. They had just gotten back from a trip to Cancun. I remembered thinking, how are they affording all this? But I never asked. I didn't want to seem nosy. Now I wished I had. The next day, I sat in a stuffy little office at the bank in Kansas City while a man named Greg laid out a thick folder of documents. Mortgage application, income verification, credit checks, all with my name, my social security number, my birth date, and a signature that looked almost like mine, but wasn't quite right. My hands started to shake again. I didn't sign these. I said quietly. Greg looked at me for a moment, then nodded. Mrs. Burns, this could be identity fraud. If this loan was taken out without your knowledge or consent, You'll need to file a report with the police. We'll also need you to work with the credit bureaus. He made copies for me and placed them in a folder. I tucked it into my bag like it was a bomb, because that's what it felt like. A bomb had gone off in my life, and the damage was just beginning. When I got back to my car, I didn't start the engine right away. I just sat there gripping the steering wheel, staring at nothing. The pieces were coming together now, and the picture they formed made my heart hurt more than anything else ever had. My son had bought his dream home, with my name, with my credit, without a single word to me. And now, I was the one left holding the debt. All I could think was, why would he do this to me? After that meeting at the bank, I drove straight home and sat in my kitchen for nearly an hour without moving. The folder from First Heritage sat on the table like it was staring at me. My hands were still shaky. I kept opening it, then closing it, then opening it again. I knew that signature wasn't mine. It was close, but there were little things off. The way the C in Catherine curled, the awkward slant of the B in Burns. But what hit harder than the forgery was the rest of what I saw. Whoever filled out that application knew everything. My full legal name, my date of birth, my social security number, where I worked before retirement, even how much I used to earn. That wasn't public information. That was my son. Suddenly, little things started coming back to me, like how Anthony had shown up a few months ago with a folder asking me to sign some trust documents. He said it was just to help protect family assets, and that it was routine. I didn't ask too many questions. It was just one page. I didn't even read it. He said it would help down the line when things transferred, whatever that meant. I trusted him. He's my child. And then there was that fancy house. He and Cynthia had just moved into it, said it was in a hot new development in Kansas City. It was the kind of neighborhood with gates and landscaping and homeowners meetings. I remembered her giving me a whole video tour from her phone, quartz countertops, oversized fridge, a Pinterest pantry, as she called it. They acted like it was a gift from God. Said they'd gotten in before prices jumped. Said it was timing and prayer. I never thought to question it. I don't use social media much, but my neighbor Marie does. A few weeks ago, she told me Cynthia had been posting pictures of her dream home journey on Instagram. Marie showed me a post on her iPad. There was Cynthia standing in front of their kitchen island, holding a latte with some long caption about stepping into our blessings and manifesting our goals. I didn't think anything of it at the time. I figured maybe Anthony had landed some big bonus at work, or maybe they got a great loan deal. But now it all felt off. Something didn't sit right. I needed someone to talk to who could be honest with me. So I went to my old bank, Oakview Credit Union, where I'd kept an account for over 25 years. Marcia, the branch manager, had known me since I opened my first savings account there. She was always straight with me. She looked through the papers I brought and shook her head. "Catherine, this doesn't look right," she said. "If you didn't authorize this, it's identity theft. You need to report it." I blinked. Even if it was my son? Marcia's voice softened. "Yes, especially if it was someone close to you. That's usually who does it, people who know your private details." She printed out a brochure on financial fraud victims and handed it to me, but I couldn't even focus. I just kept seeing Anthony's face when he brought those papers over. Could he really have done this? I left the bank and drove to the grocery store, but I never went inside. I just sat in the parking lot, staring at the cart return. I raised him better than this. I raised him alone. His father died when he was 12. I worked 2 jobs for years to make sure he never felt that absence too deeply. I saved every penny so he could go to college. When he got that job in tech sales, I was so proud. I didn't understand everything he did, but I knew he was doing well. Or so I thought. And Cynthia, she always struck me as someone who liked the finer things. Fancy clothes, name brands, flashy handbags. I just assumed they were living a bit beyond their means. I didn't know they were using my name to pay for it. I pulled myself together enough to drive to First Heritage again. I asked for copies of all the documents tied to the loan. When the banker handed them over, I felt sick again. Every page had my name at the top. Most had signatures that looked almost like mine. And then there were income statements, completely made up, saying I earned over $140,000 a year as a consultant. I haven't worked since 2018, and I sure never made six figures. There was a page where I was supposedly listing assets, retirement funds, investment accounts, a vacation property in Arkansas. I don't own any of that. My only asset is the house I've lived in for over 3 decades and the old Buick sitting in the driveway. This wasn't just one document. It was a full-on scheme. Someone had gone through every step, gathering my information, falsifying income, forging signatures, and then put a loan of over $500,000 in my name. And they were already 3 months behind on payments. I asked the banker if I could speak to someone in the fraud department. He said I'd need to file a police report first. Until then, they had to treat the account as mine. I thanked him and left. I sat in my car again, clutching the folder. My chest felt tight. It was the same tightness I felt when I lost my husband, that mix of fear and helplessness. Only this time, it wasn't some cruel twist of fate. This time, it felt personal. My own son might have done this to me, and I had no idea why. The next morning, I woke up with a pit in my stomach. I barely touched my toast. The coffee turned cold in my hands. I kept thinking, what if I'm wrong? What if there's some kind of explanation? But deep down, I already knew. I found a handwriting specialist through a recommendation at the credit union. His office was small, just a desk, a chair, and a few framed certificates on the wall. His name was Jerome Tate. He had kind eyes and didn't rush me as I laid out the stack of papers from the bank. These signatures, I said quietly, pointing. They look like mine, but I didn't sign any of this. He adjusted his glasses and looked closely. Do you have samples of your real signature? I handed him my passport copy and a few checks I'd signed over the years. He lined them up and got to work, murmuring things under his breath I didn't understand. I just sat there, heart pounding in my chest. After about 20 minutes, he looked up. These are forged, he said plainly, very carefully, but they're not yours. The pressure, the spacing, the strokes. Whoever did this was trying to mimic, not write naturally. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Would you be able to say that in a legal report? I asked. He nodded. Yes, I'll draft a full analysis for you. But even at a glance, this isn't your writing. I left with copies in a sealed envelope and sat in the car again. It was becoming my habit. Get bad news, sit in the car, try to breathe. That afternoon, I met with a financial advisor named Lisa Whitmore. The credit union had given me her name. Her office had a little table fountain and a jar of mints. She smiled politely, but her expression changed as she flipped through the pages I gave her. Mrs. Burns, she said slowly, this isn't just a mortgage. Whoever did this also opened a line of credit against that house. Another $85,000. I blinked. What? And 2 credit cards under your name. One with a $20,000 limit, already maxed out. Another at $15,000. Plus a personal loan, $30,000, showing up as unpaid. I stared at her. My head felt like it was filled with buzzing. All of this in my name? Yes, it's not uncommon. Once someone gets through with a mortgage this size, it's easier to open more under that same identity. It looks like you're a high earner with a major asset. I closed my eyes. And what does that do to my credit? She turned her screen toward me. My score had dropped to 538. It used to be over 770. She paused before speaking again. You'll need a police report to dispute this with the credit bureaus. Without that, they'll treat you like the one who borrowed the money. I nodded slowly. I didn't even cry. I was past that part now. After I left her office, I called Mildred. She's a friend from church and has known me for more than 20 years. If there's anyone who shoots straight, it's Mildred. She came over that evening with banana bread and a frown on her face. We sat at the table, and I told her everything about the call, the house, the fake documents, and now all these loans and cards I didn't know existed. She didn't interrupt, just listened, arms folded, eyes sharp. When I finished, she said, "Catherine, you need to call the police. Right now." I looked down at my hands. "It's Anthony." She didn't blink. "I don't care if it's the Pope. He stole from you, lied to you, ruined your credit. But he's my son," I whispered. "I raised him by myself. His father died when he was in middle school. I worked evenings at the library, weekends at the school board office. I missed holidays and birthdays just trying to keep a roof over our heads. I gave him everything I had." Mildred softened. She reached across the table and touched my hand. "And this is how he repays you." I keep thinking, maybe it was Cynthia, I said, voice cracking. She's the one always talking about manifesting wealth and never settling. Maybe she pressured him. Mildred didn't respond right away. She just said, "It doesn't matter who drove the bus. He let it run over you." That night, I laid on the couch. I didn't even go to bed. My thoughts were racing, heart too heavy to rest. It was nearly 10 p.m. when my phone buzzed. It was a voicemail from Cynthia. I hesitated before hitting play. "Hi, Mrs. Burns, it's Cynthia. I hope you're doing okay. I know things have been, well, kind of weird. Anthony, and we'd really love to talk. Privately, just the three of us. Maybe clear the air? I mean, things aren't always what they seem, right? Anyway, call me when you can." She sounded nervous, too sweet, like someone trying to put sugar over something spoiled. I didn't respond. I just sat there in the dark, phone in hand, staring at the ceiling. Things weren't always what they seemed. No, they were worse. And I was finally seeing them clearly. Sunday dinners were always sacred in our family. It was something I started years ago when Anthony was in high school. No matter how busy we all got, we tried to keep that one meal together. A pot roast, some mashed potatoes, banana pudding, something warm on the table, even if the conversation was light. I almost canceled this one. After everything I'd learned, just the thought of sitting across from him made my stomach twist. But a part of me needed to see his face. I needed to hear what he had to say, not through Cynthia, not over the phone. In person, where there was no running from it. They arrived right on time, just after 4. Cynthia walked in first, heels clicking across the floor, carrying a glass dish with some new Pinterest recipe she wanted me to try. She wore a cream-colored blouse and had her hair pulled up like she was headed to a photo shoot. Anthony followed with a grocery bag of drinks and that fake casual smile he always gave when he wanted something. "Smells amazing in here, Mom," he said, setting the bag on the counter. "Just a roast," I replied, smiling the way I always had, though it didn't feel right. Cynthia wasted no time. She started talking about their home renovations, new kitchen counters, a custom backsplash. She pulled out her phone and showed me pictures of gold faucets and tile work that probably cost more than my car. "It's all coming together so beautifully," she said, grinning. "You'll have to come visit soon." "Oh, and we ordered a chandelier from Italy, $3,000, but totally worth it. I nodded, pretending to be impressed. But inside, I was somewhere else. I kept picturing the documents with my name, the forged signature, the unpaid debts, their house, my credit. Dinner was quiet. Anthony asked about my garden, Cynthia talked about her growing online presence, and I mostly just passed the rolls and kept the conversation moving. I don't think Anthony noticed how little I spoke. Or maybe he did and didn't care. After the dishes were cleared and I poured the coffee, I excused myself and went into the bedroom. I grabbed the folder I prepared, copies of everything: the mortgage, the loan balances, the credit report, the handwriting analysis. My hand trembled as I carried it back into the dining room. I sat down slowly. My heart was beating so hard I could feel it in my ears. Anthony, I started, keeping my voice steady. There's something I need to talk to you both about. He looked up from his phone. Sure. Everything okay? No, I said. I placed the folder on the table and slid it toward him. Cynthia's smile twitched. Her eyes darted to the folder, like it was going to bite her. What's this? She asked, laughing a little too quickly. Open it. Anthony flipped it open and stared at the first page. I watched his face change. The blood drained from it as he turned page after page. Mortgage details, the credit line, the fake pay stubs, the forged signature, side by side with my real one. Cynthia reached over and pulled it from his hands. Her smile vanished. I know what you did, I said. Finally, I've spoken to the bank, a handwriting expert, a financial advisor. I know everything. They sat in silence. Anthony rubbed his hands together. Cynthia looked around like she was searching for an exit. I didn't want to believe it. I continued. But it's all here. You used my name, my credit, my entire identity for a house you couldn't afford. We were going to fix it, Mom. Cynthia jumped in, her voice overly sweet. We just needed a little time. We didn't mean for it to get so far. You forged documents. I said, you opened accounts in my name. You let them default. That's not a little mistake, Cynthia. Anthony finally spoke. It wasn't supposed to be like this. We were denied the loan, and we didn't know what else to do. You've always had great credit, Mom. I thought we could handle it. You thought wrong. I said, my voice sharp now. You used me, and when you started missing payments, you said nothing. We didn't want to worry you, Cynthia said, putting a hand on my arm. I pulled away. This is fraud. I could lose my house, my pension, my peace. I haven't slept in a week. Cynthia's voice dropped to a whisper. Please don't go to the police. Think about the family. Think about Ava. Do you really want her to grow up visiting her father in jail? I stared at her. You should have thought of that before using me like a credit card. Anthony stood up, pacing behind the chair. Look, I'll figure it out. I'll talk to the bank. Just give me a chance. Please. I looked at him. My son, the boy I raised, the man who now sat across from me with his hands shaking and a lie unraveling around him. I trusted you, I said quietly. I trusted you with everything, and you took advantage of that. Cynthia's eyes filled with tears, but I wasn't sure if they were real or just strategy. Mom, she whispered again, please don't break up the family. I stood up slowly. You broke the family the day you put my name on that loan. Then I walked out of the room and into the kitchen. I needed space. I needed air. I needed to think. And for the first time, I truly understood this wasn't just a bad decision. It was betrayal. When I got home that night, I didn't even take off my shoes. I sat down on the edge of the couch and stared at the floor for what must have been an hour. My house was quiet, just the old wall clock ticking and the hum of the refrigerator. But inside me, it felt like a storm. I kept going back and forth. One minute I was furious. The next, I felt sick with guilt. That was my son, my only child, and I was the one who'd laid the truth out on the table. I'd watched the shame in his face. I'd heard the pleading in Cynthia's voice. And for a moment, I actually felt sorry for them. But then I remembered the paperwork, the fake income numbers, the forged signature, the loans stacked up in my name like I was some kind of personal ATM. And it hardened me all over again. The next morning, I called Pastor Don. I didn't tell him everything, just that I needed to talk. We met at the church office later that afternoon. He offered me coffee. I didn't want any. I told him enough to paint the picture, what Anthony had done, what Cynthia had said, how I didn't know what to do next. He listened without interrupting, arms crossed over his chest, eyes steady. When I finished, he said, "Catherine, forgiveness is not the same as pretending it didn't happen." I nodded slowly. "You can love someone and still hold them accountable," he continued. "Forgiveness doesn't mean letting someone keep hurting you." I wiped at my eyes with a tissue from my purse. I keep thinking if I go to the police, I'll ruin his life. "No," he said firmly. "He ruined his own life when he used your name without asking. When he put you in this position." It was quiet for a while. "You've spent your whole life protecting him," he added. "Maybe now it's time to protect yourself." That night, I sat at my kitchen table with all the paperwork in front of me again. I picked up the phone and dialed the number for the Springfield Police Department's Financial Crimes Unit. A woman named Detective Elise Warner called me back the next morning. She sounded calm, professional, asked if I could come in to give a statement. I agreed. Walking into that station felt strange. I'd never had reason to be there in all my 69 years. I clutched that folder like it was glued to my hands. They led me to a small room. No frills, just a desk, 2 chairs, and a recorder on the table. Detective Warner asked me to start from the beginning. I told her everything. How I got the call, how I discovered the documents, how I suspected my son. She took notes as I spoke, sometimes asking questions about dates or names. When I finished, she leaned back slightly. "Mrs. Burns, I'm sorry you're going through this. Sadly, this kind of case, family identity theft, is more common than people realize. You're not alone." She looked through the folder I'd brought and nodded. "This is good documentation. It'll help a lot." I signed the official report and handed over copies of everything. She told me they'd request digital records from the bank and credit bureaus, and that they could also subpoena the IP addresses used in the loan application. "You said your son lives at 901 Willow Glen Circle, right?" she asked. I nodded. "We'll look into it." 3 days later, she called me again. "We've traced the application to an IP address that came from your son's residence," she said. "Also, the documents list an email address that's just 1 letter off from your actual email. That's a common tactic in fraud." I swallowed hard. "What else?" She took a breath. "We've also found online searches from their home network related to bankruptcy laws and identity-based filings. From the timing and keywords, it looks like they were preparing to file for bankruptcy in your name." I sat there stunned. I could barely get the words out. They were going to let me take the fall? "I'm afraid so." I didn't respond. I just thanked her and hung up. The betrayal cut deeper than I thought it could. It wasn't just that they used my name for a loan. It was that they had plans to dump the whole mess on me, to walk away clean while I was left holding the damage. That night, Cynthia started texting. First, it was soft. "Mrs. Burns, I just want to say we're really sorry. We never meant for it to get this far. We thought we'd fix it." Then she shifted. "You're seriously going to throw your own son in jail after all he's done for you?" Then back again. "Please, just let us make this right. No police. No lawyers. We're family. I didn't reply. The next morning, she sent a long message begging me to think of Ava, their daughter, my granddaughter. I read it, sat with it, then blocked her number. I needed peace. I wasn't going to get it by staying quiet. About 6 months after their arrest, the court offered a plea deal. Anthony took it. 14 months in a minimum security facility, plus 3 years of probation. Cynthia got 9 months and probation too. They were also ordered to pay restitution, though I didn't expect to see much of it anytime soon. Their accounts had already been frozen. Their fancy house was on the market. The Range Rover Cynthia loved to show off had been repossessed. It didn't bring me joy. I didn't feel like I'd won, but I did feel a little lighter, like something inside me had finally let go. With part of the early restitution funds, I bought a used Honda. My old Buick had become unreliable, and I needed something that wouldn't leave me stranded at the grocery store. It wasn't new or fancy, but it started when I turned the key and the air conditioner worked. That was enough. I also made the decision to move. The memories tied to my old house had changed. It was still my home, but every time I walked past the spot where Anthony used to fix his bike or looked at the empty corner where Ava's toys once sat, I felt something heavy inside me. It didn't feel like safety anymore. I found a small apartment complex just outside town. It was nothing grand, but it was clean, quiet, and had a gated entrance. The doors locked tight, and the neighbors mostly kept to themselves. It suited me fine. Moving was hard at first. I'd lived in my house for over 30 years. Every drawer had a story, but starting fresh gave me something I hadn't had in months: control. I chose what came with me. I let go of what didn't. Once I settled in, I joined a senior book club hosted at the community center. We met twice a month in a room that smelled like old paper and coffee creamer. It felt good to be around other women again, women who talked about fiction, gardening, and their grandkids without whispering. One of them, Denise, introduced me to a mentoring program at the library. High school girls could sign up to be paired with someone older for career guidance, reading help, or just conversation. I signed up. Twice a week, I met with a girl named Olivia, 17, sharp as a tack, and trying to figure out how to get into nursing school with no help from home. She reminded me of who I was at her age. We didn't talk about my personal life much, but every now and then she'd say something like, "Thanks for listening," and I'd feel like I was finally putting something good back into the world. One afternoon, I came home to find a letter waiting in my mailbox. It was from Anthony. I knew the handwriting right away. I sat down and opened it slowly. It was 4 pages long. He said he was sorry. He said he never meant to hurt me, that he got in over his head and panicked, that Cynthia pushed, but he agreed, that he hated seeing me on the news, that prison food was awful, that he'd learned his lesson. And then, in the middle of the letter, something shifted. He started talking about how I'd always been too rigid, how I never really helped him financially, even when he was struggling, how I always expected him to be perfect. He said I could have fixed everything quietly instead of dragging the whole family through court. I stopped reading. He wasn't sorry for what he'd done. He was sorry he got caught. There's a difference. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. I didn't tear it up. I just didn't respond. About a week later, Cynthia's mother called me. I hadn't heard from her in over a year. She sounded chipper, too chipper. "Catherine, I was hoping we could meet for coffee," she said. "Talk this through. Smooth things over. For the family's sake." I let the silence sit for a second. Then I said, "I already did, by speaking up." She paused. "I'm not interested in smoothing anything over," I added. "I'm interested in healing. And that starts with truth, not pretending." She didn't argue, just mumbled something about understanding and hung up. I stood in my little kitchen, phone in hand, feeling strangely calm. Setting boundaries wasn't something I was raised to do. We grew up believing family meant sacrifice, no matter what. That you kept quiet to keep the peace. That you forgave because that's what good people did. But I've learned something through all this. Peace built on silence isn't peace at all. It's fear. And it breaks you in ways people don't always see. Real peace came when I stood up for myself. When I said, enough. When I stopped excusing what should never have happened. I still thought about Ava. I still missed her laugh and the way she used to crawl into my lap with a book. But I had to trust that one day she'd be old enough to understand the truth for herself. Until then, I kept my door open, but my heart guarded. Healing, I learned, doesn't mean going back to how things were. It means moving forward with new rules. It's been 2 years since everything fell apart. Or maybe I should say 2 years since I decided to stop holding everything together. I'm living in a small manufactured home just outside of Springfield. It's nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and a porch with just enough space for 2 chairs and a wind chime. But it's mine. It has my name alone on the deed. And after everything I've been through, that means more than I can explain. Buying it wasn't easy. The fraud had done real damage to my credit, even with the police report and court records. Some companies were slow to clear my name, but I stayed on top of it. Phone calls, letters, certified mail. Bit by bit, I rebuilt. When I signed the closing papers for this home, I cried not out of sadness, but relief. It was the first big decision in years that was completely mine. No one else's name. No signatures faked. No lies tucked into fine print. I filled the house slowly. I didn't want to drag my past into it. I bought a few used pieces from estate sales. Things that felt right, not just useful. I added plants by the windows. A small bookshelf by the kitchen. I even found an old armchair that reminded me of the one I used to read in back at the library. Ava visits most weekends now. She's older, more curious. I still haven't told her everything. That will come in time, when she's ready to understand. For now, we play cards, bake muffins, and go for walks around the neighborhood. She brings laughter back into my space. Anthony writes every so often. The letters come every few months. Sometimes they're apologetic. Other times, they feel like he's trying to explain himself more than say sorry. I read them. I don't always respond. I've forgiven him, but I haven't forgotten. That's a choice I'm allowed to make. Cynthia hasn't contacted me since she was released. I'm okay with that. I've started sharing my story more openly, not for sympathy, but for strength. A few months ago, I spoke at a women's group downtown. Most of the women were older, like me. A few nodded along when I described how it felt to be betrayed by your own child. Some even cried when I talked about how hard it was to speak up. I told them the truth. I used to believe keeping quiet was the best way to keep peace in the family. But I learned that if your peace is costing you your dignity, it's not peace at all. It's survival. And survival is not the same as living. After the meeting, a woman pulled me aside. She said her grandson had been using her credit card for months. He kept promising to pay her back. He never did. She hadn't told anyone. She said, "You made me feel like maybe I'm not crazy. Maybe I deserve better." That one sentence made all the hard parts worth it. These days, I mentor 2 girls from the library program. Olivia is still there, and another girl named Layla just joined. We sit in the reading room once a week and talk about everything from school stress to how to set up a bank account. They ask me questions I never would have dared ask an adult when I was their age. I tell them trust is earned, not assumed. And even with people you love, you still have the right to ask questions. You still have the right to protect yourself. I never imagined this would be my story, but here I am, not broken, not bitter, just stronger and smarter. Some days, the ache still hits me, especially when I see families laughing at the park or hear someone talk about their son with pride. I think of who Anthony used to be, or who I thought he was. But then I remind myself he made his choices, and I made mine. I chose to speak up. I chose to protect what I had left. I chose to start over when silence would have been easier. And if I had to do it again, I would. To anyone out there who's watching this and quietly holding onto someone else's mess, I want to say this. You don't owe anyone your silence. You don't have to carry shame that doesn't belong to you. You can say, "This hurt me," and still be a loving person. Because love without boundaries is not love. It's fear dressed up to look like loyalty. And if you're afraid of what will happen when you finally speak your truth, let me tell you something. Freedom is on the other side of that fear. I hope my story gave you something to think about. Maybe even the courage to start your own healing. If it did, I'd love for you to like this video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe for more stories like mine. And before you go, let me ask you, have you ever been pressured to stay silent by the people who hurt you most? What did you do? And would you do it differently now? Share your experience in the comments. You never know who it might help. Thank you for listening. And take care of yourself. You deserve it.